Would y'all mind doing me a huge favor and rate and review this podcast on iTunes or your favorite podcast catchers? If you can, even if you don't listen on iTunes, we'd really love the rating and review on iTunes, as that will bring more listeners, which means more Getting Geeky with Game Relief for you and your friends and anybody else out there. We'd really appreciate it. In this episode of Getting Geeky with Game Relief, I sit down with Sam, who first appeared on episode 58, to talk all about his game, Heroes of History, that has gone through some updates and had different things. Note, in several weeks there will be more in regards to this game, including a review from us, as well as a discount from Sam for y'all, as well as an extra conversation for my email subscribers. So make sure you jump over to GameReliefGo.com and subscribe to our email so you never miss a super secret episode of Getting Geeky with Game Relief. This episode of Getting Geeky with Game Relief is proudly being powered by Syther Gaming. They're going to have a new tabletop space warfare 4X refined game called Overbattle, the all-war game, which will be on Kickstarter come the 19th of March. So make sure you jump over to their Facebook page, jump over and check out this pinned post, and then click the sign up button below for reminders, exclusives, and discount codes. So watch for Overbattle coming to Kickstarter near you on the 19th of March. This episode of Getting Geeky with Game Relief is also proudly being powered by DGS Games and their new Snakes and Skulls Freeblades Fantasy Miniatures, Chakram Wavestalkers and Kandorian Deathmasters for the Freeblades 32mm Fantasy Skirmish game. There's 17 more days to go on this campaign. It ends Tuesday, the 22nd of January. So check out Snakes and Skulls Freeblades Fantasy Miniatures from DGS Games. This episode of Getting Geeky with Game Relief is also proudly being powered by Inner Sanctum, a set collection card game of secret societies. Be the first to reach the 7th level and earn the right to enter the Inner Sanctum, coming to you from New Comet Games. They still have 19 days to go on this campaign, going through the 24th of January, and you can get this game for $16. So check out Inner Sanctum from New Comet Games, now on a Kickstarter near you. This episode of Getting Geeky with Game Relief is proudly being powered by Nocturion, a dark fantasy, dice rolling, worker placement, and resource management game for 2 to 4 players, coming to us from Vespius Media Ltd. They're almost 400%, I believe, over their funding goal, and there's still 10 days to go to get in on the fun of this one, as the project goes through Tuesday the 15th of January. We actually sent out a super secret episode, so if you're subscribed to the email on GameReliefGo.com, you would have gotten that. So if you haven't listened, and you haven't listened to that episode either, you can go catch the one in your super secret email, and it will not have Kickstarter Corner in it. So either way, check out Nocturion, a dark fantasy dice rolling game, worker placement and resource management game for 2 to 4 players on Kickstarter through the 15th of January. We're just going to go ahead and jump straight into this interview with Game Relief and Sam, currently in progress. Hang on until after the interview so you can find out what games we're bringing to you in our Kickstarter Corner. We'll catch you on the flip side of this interview. Game Relief kind of out.
Getting Geeky with Gamer Leaf, the podcast in which one man strives to level up his geekhood and helping you do the same, one battle at a time. Now, let's get geeky with Gamer Leaf.
Welcome to Heroes of History. It is I, Alexander the Great, ruler of Macedon, and all of Greece, and soon the entire world. I'm having a problem here, and maybe you can help me. See, I don't understand what is wrong with these people on my team here in Heroes of History. We're supposed to fight in the trenches, the greatest warriors and kings and creatures of mythology in all Greece. By myself, I conquered many, many nations and defeated the Persian Empire. Yet somehow my allies, my supposed allies, cannot figure out how to beat a guy named Eric Bloodaxe, who does nothing in the trench. I have summoned all the warriors and brought the greatest weapons. We have brought the Zephyr sword. We have brought my father's Sarissa spear. And of course, from Olympus itself, Artemis's bow, which we use to smite all the Norse villains that are standing our way. It is up to you to come please help me, because so many of my allies are unable to do so by themselves. They need a general. They need a great general. And that general could be you. Do you have what it takes to be a hero?
Did that sound familiar to you guys? It didn't to me. Well, actually, in fact, it did sound familiar to me because we have previously showcased an episode or an issue of this game, Heroes of History, and tonight we're lucky enough to have on the creator and mastermind of this great game back on with us again after quite the hiatus as we had him on episode 58, and now we've done over 300 plus episodes. Welcome back to Getting Geeky with Gamerleaf. We really appreciate you coming back on the show, Sam. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastically. How are you doing?
Not too shabby, awesome. So, it sounds like a lot has happened since last we spoke. What's going on with Heroes of History? Well, let's rewind. Before we get into the Heroes of History, let's rewind a little bit if we could, in case somebody hasn't gone back and listened to episode 58. How did you get into playing tabletop board games, Sam?
I always played some games as a kid. My father, in particular, was fond of one that I loved called Empires of the Middle Ages, which is very, very old, but it's a very classic historical game based on medieval Europe, and it allows you to control different empires and essentially change history, so to speak. So I was always interested. I played a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! Growing up, a little bit of Magic, not as much, although more Yu-Gi-Oh!, Pokemon, some of those games. Played some other board games too, both the classics like Monopoly and even some lesser-known games as well. And then in terms of, that's how I got into it. And then it made sense when I had come out with my first game that it would be a tabletop game. It was something that was within my power to make, and also something that I had done and I had enjoyed, remembering my childhood days, and that actually is what brought me to Heroes of History.
Well, that's pretty cool. Now, that game that you said you played with your dad, what was that called again?
Empires of the Middle Ages.
Empires of the Middle Ages. Do you still play that today, or does he still have a copy? Do you know?
We do. It's very hard to find a copy because the game's been out of print for decades. So we actually have probably one of the few copies remaining. Yes, we haven't played in a while, but we were working on this thing called the Grand Scenario. So the game basically is different scenarios that you can play, or you can do all the scenarios together, and that's the Grand Scenario. And it takes, to put it in perspective, it's 140 rounds, and I would say each round's about 20 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes. So.
Oh, wow. So quite a game. What kind of mechanics does that game use?
So that does it's a lot of card drawing. So you have cards that, so each person will draw a certain number of event cards, or you get 5 per turn. And you flip over, when it's your turn, players go one at a time. Each player will flip a card. And you'll decide you have certain actions. So you can go to war, you can pillage for gold, you can do diplomacy to try to build up alliances with a different territory. You can make a claim like to build let's say there's a city that you just conquered, you want to boost your prestige, so to speak. There's different things you can do, and you flip over a card, and so you have a different score, right? You have statistics in your combat, your diplomacy, and your administration. Those are your 3 stats, ranked 1 through 9. 9 is the best, 1 is atrocious. And depending on your stat and what action you're taking, you flip over a card, and if your card is equal to or lower than what your combat stat, your action stat is, so to speak, then you would win. So I'll give you one example. If you wanted to go to war and your guy was a 7 in combat, and you can pay gold, you can do all kinds of different things you can do. So you flip over a card, and if the card says that all actions with a 4 or over, if you try to go to war, you win, then you would get whatever result you wanted. So you might conquer a city, you might weaken someone's defenses. And then during your turn, you can collect taxes. And then when your turn is over, after you've played your 5 cards, if you've so chosen to do that, your turn ends. Some people would even save cards because you would routinely have like Vikings and Saracens and Mongols and all kinds of people invading. So if you wanted to protect yourself from an invasion by, let's say, the computer, then you would save your cards, your action cards, so that you could play them in defense of your territory.
Oh, okay, cool. It sounds like they use somewhat of a hand management in that game as well, so that's kind of cool.
Yeah, no, it was a great game.
Cool. Yeah, it sounds like it. As being a designer and stuff, having made your own game now, what would be one thing you would do to enhance that game, Sam?
You mean one thing from Empires that I used in Heroes?
Well, what would being having designed Heroes, if you could go back and do something to enhance Empires, what would that be?
I would like to use more individual stats. So Empires is not like Heroes of History is actually set up for somewhat casual gamers, maybe not like the type that's into Monopoly, but people who have played, Magic or Yu-Gi-Oh, who like gaming, but aren't looking for like a 4-hour war game. So you would jump into mine. Empires of the Middle Ages is for the people that would jump into those games. So what I would have added that probably would have helped Empires is more personality. See, there's no people in the games. You're just numbers on a board. Whereas Heroes is all about the combatants. And I would have loved to have seen an element in Empires. Maybe make the battle phase a little bit more complex than it was in the game.
Awesome. It sounds like you added some character and whatnot to Heroes of History. Per se, somebody hasn't gone back and listened to that, or they don't know what Heroes of History is. Let's start off with the initial game, because it sounds like you're quite a few expansions in. What can you tell us about Heroes of History?
So Heroes of History was created I created that about 3 or so years ago in response to, at the time I worked in Delaware. I'm in Philadelphia area, but I was working in Delaware. I was involved in some education work. And as someone who loves history, like I'm the strange guy that goes to like different historical sites around the country because I like seeing like Civil War, Revolution, etc. That a lot of people just don't care, right? People just, they're just broken buildings, whatever. And also that I felt like part of the reason was because most history was boring. The war games were mostly for people that were like these, 50 plus history buffs that wanted to play like the 4-hour games, and younger people weren't really into that. You don't have the span, so they weren't really getting like a good historical experience, and they also weren't learning anything in school. But they also maybe were interested in gaming, because I always, as a kid, preferred gaming to learning. I preferred learning while gaming. In fact, a lot of my favorite games growing up were educational games that were actually fun. So Heroes of History was a start into my way into how can I combine one of my passions, one of my things that I love that actually has value, because learning history there is a value in doing it. People don't think about it. You think about like STEM and math and science, etc. But there is a value in understanding and appreciating history, because we are all living history every single day. Everything you do is historical if you want to think about it. So I wanted to figure out, well, how do you do that? And so the way I did that was, it just came to me one day that I realized, hey, like Yu-Gi-Oh, what would happen if like George Washington was fighting Robert Lee or pick anybody, or at the time even like Abraham Lincoln was wielding a musket and he was going up against somebody else. And I thought that actually sounds kind of fun. And then you can add like little cards to it that would enhance the game. And that is the process of how the Heroes started. And then since then, when we moved to the second set, we could talk a little bit more if you'd like about the first set. if you want just me to rehash. Would you like me to do that?
Yeah, for sure. Because unfortunately, you're gonna hate me for this, but you sent us a copy. Looking back at the episode, I don't know. I remember exactly when you sent it to us, but you had that Kickstarter back in. Well, we had our episode with you back over a year ago, and I just opened my box, and all our cards are still in the shrink wrap. So, yeah, can you give us a quick refresher?
That's okay. You know what? It's common. I think I have the same with a bunch of. I have games that I've collected. I actually got. I can't remember the name. It's a really good Greek mythology game that I backed on Kickstarter, and I have a copy. And it's like I'm promising myself I'm going to play it, and I'm going to get to it, but I haven't done it yet. So the first set of Heroes of History for new listeners is Midnight Riders versus Echoes of the Plains. So Paul Revere is on the cover. He looks like a ninja, which is kind of cool. Paul Revere was on the cover, as well as Annie Oakley. The reason I put Annie was originally I was going to put George Washington and Robert Lee. I took the game to a class of sixth graders at a local school. It was actually a non-denominational Christian school. And I showed the kids the game, and they really liked it. The kids were like playing it nonstop. So when the session was over, the teacher had let me come in, and then I asked the kids, like, listen, I want to know who you think I should put on the cover, because I had 25 kids that likely would be a good audience. And Caesar Rodney won the contest, which surprised me. But then when I had them vote on the Civil War set, one of the girls who was playing said, well, you should put a girl on the cover so that girls know that it's not just a game for boys. And the idea, surprisingly, did not seem to lose as many boys as I thought. So I said, you know what? I will put Annie Oakley on the cover. So that set is Midnight Riders is the American Revolution and more War of 1812. So I get like Andrew Jackson in there, a couple other people. And then some of the cards are more relevant to that time period. So you'll have your muskets. You'll have a card about, you'll have Francis Marion in there. You'll have Old Ironsides, which is in Boston currently. It's a very cool ship. Everybody, if you ever go to Boston, check it out. And then the Civil War set was kind of, you've got the Civil War, you've got Ulysses Grant, you've got Robert Lee, you've got the big names. You've got Abraham Lincoln shows up as a non-playable card. But then I also added some of the Western expansions, so people who also were involved in the West. And the set also includes Indians as well, so Tecumseh's in the game, Sitting Bull's in the game. Some of the characters that we learn in history, not only on different sides, make up the game, so you can kind of see the, I would say, diverse group of people that really built this country and made us what we are.
Yeah, I was going to ask, with there being Echoes of the Plains, so it's both the Plains as well as the Civil War?
Yes. In fact, so one of the things that you'll learn if you play that, because one of the cool thing is this game, because I've gotten a lot of feedback, people have said that it's one of the more fun educational games they've ever played, because you can actually learn cool things that you might care about and you didn't even realize it because you're just having such a good time. Some of the characters that appear in that Echoes of the Plains are people who are both in the Civil War as well as in the Plains and Indians Wars. So, for example, William Sherman. Everyone knows Colonel Custard, right? The ambush at the Battle of the Little Bighorn. He was actually in both as well as Marcus Reno, who was his assistant, was in one. So there's a little bit of overlap, and I thought that was kind of cool. That was actually something I learned when I was doing the research.
Awesome. And it looks like, I didn't realize this, well, I guess I did probably at the time, but it looks like we also have, it doesn't come in the tuck box, but we also have, I want to say this is the Viking episode, or Viking pack of cards as well, as there's Valhalla shows up on the cards, it looks like.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So, and if I recall correctly, I can go ahead and mix them. Like I could be fighting midnight people from 1812 with people from the Civil War, and then also with this Viking deck, you could be fighting with the Civil War people against Vikings, if I recall correctly from our last talk.
Yes. So actually, I'll give you an example. I went to the Boston Festival of Indie Games back in 2016. And one of the things I did is I didn't have the full, because I didn't have what I have now with the Vikings and the Greeks, but I had like a rudimentary deck that I had put together as I was trying to build up momentum for that Kickstarter. And people actually had the chance to play like Greeks versus Confederates or George Washington's team versus Thor's team. And people really liked that experience. You not only can you play the deck, each deck is actually built to be a standalone, so you can just take a deck out of the box and go right away. But you can actually mix cards up as well. So if you decide you want to take half of the Viking deck and half of the American Revolution deck and throw them in together, the game will actually still work. You can actually do that. The mechanics are the same. The cards play off each other. And it's kind of interesting, what would happen if you were in Valhalla and George Washington was there with William Sherman, and on the other side you've got Alexander the Great and Odysseus. Who would win? You're making history, and that was actually one of the cool aspects of the game.
Cool. In a sense, it kind of reminds me of what was it? Sherman and Peabody, the old cartoon.
A little bit, I guess.
Yeah, but I guess they weren't having wars and stuff. So, per se, me and you sat down to play Heroes of History. What's my turn going to look like, Sam?
So, what your turn's going to look like is, so you draw a card, and let's assume that you're not the player who goes first. The player who goes first just can't attack on his turn or her turn. So So we have a draw up rule. Your hand is considered 5 cards. If you don't have 5 cards in your hand, you can draw until you have 5 cards, but that is an option, not a requirement. But you must draw at least 1 card to start. So you draw 1 to 5 cards, let's say, all right? Then you proceed to your main action phase, and you can take up. We modified a little bit from. There's a couple of rules changes on the new set from the old set, and these will be the rules going forward. But one of the things is now you have 6 actions. Before it wasn't quite as it was more unlimited. So now you basically can choose. You can play a person, you can play a battlefield, you can play a weapon card, you can play action cards, in basically anything that equals 6. And then when you're done with, you can after you've made whatever you want to make, you can go ahead and attack. So then you have a battle phase, and then there's like a battle that you can do, and basically you're calculating numbers and trying to gain an advantage. And then when your battling is over, however, it's usually 1 combatant attacks 1 combatant. It's not like Magic where people can block and double team. It doesn't work like that. Just because I wanted to make it fair for people who maybe weren't as familiar with the gaming. And so you engage in whatever battles you want to engage in. You try to win in the trenches. And then when your battle is over, if you have either your turn ends or if you haven't used your 6 actions yet, you can finish your actions and then your turn would end. And then once you're if there's any effects that have to be resolved when your turn's over, like a card has to be discarded, you take care of that and then it moves to your opponent's turn.
Okay, and how does the battle look like? Am I able to defend myself, or just what's the battle look like, Sam?
Absolutely. So we introduced. There is a card here in the deck, Siren Song, for example, that you can actually play straight out of your hand. And there's another one as well. This is like an example that if you were the player and you have that card and your opponent's attacking, you can play it from your hand on their turn and you block them. So that's which you don't have in other games. When you're attacking, so what you do is, let's say you have 2 people and let's say you have 3 people and they have 2 people. So you might have one, you've set your side up, you've got the battle, you're fighting in the battlefield you want, the people have the weapons they want, you have the action cards out that do what you want, right? And then you look at your opponent's side and then you say, okay, you know what, I'm going to attack you. So you have let me pick. I actually have the set right in front of me. So let's say you have. No, I don't want to spoil him. Rollo, right? So if you ever watch the Vikings TV show on the History Channel, which is one of my favorites, you may have seen Rollo, who is a real person. So you say Rollo's going to attack somebody. He's going to attack. I don't know. Pick somebody. He's going to attack Perseus, right? Who's the hero Perseus? So then you do the math. You figure out, okay, here's my attack. Here's your defense. Here are the cards that help me. So I have a weapon that helps me. You don't have a weapon that doesn't help you. And then I figure out that my attack is better than your side. So I'm going to defeat you. Now, if Perseus is defending, then nothing happens. He just dies, goes to the museum. If he was in attack mode, he was exposed. So you would actually, a little bit like Magic in that sense, you would lose the difference, right? There'd be like a point trample through effect through to your state points, which is like your currency. And then that's it. And then you might, let's say you defeated both of the opponents. So then you might have one person left and your opponent is exposed. You then just hit your opponent directly. You add him up and say, okay, he's worth 10. I'm hitting you for 10. And you lose that from your point total.
Okay, awesome. And you said you have like up to 6 actions or whatnot you can take. So how does that look? I suffer from analysis paralysis or AP. How is that combated in this game? Or is it going to take me forever to do my turn? Or are people going to hate me for playing this with them?
No. So the first time you play through, especially if you I don't know about you personally, but people who maybe aren't as familiar with like turn-based games, maybe it will take a while. The first time, maybe even the second time, you might take a little bit. Once you actually get the mechanics, and it really won't take more than about 2 rounds to get the mechanics, and you know like kind of what the cards do. The turns are very simple. Could be like in this second set, there are each deck has 11 unique combatants, so some combatants appear more than once. So once you know each of the 11 people in your side, well, then you know what they do. And after you've played them 2 or 3 times, you would know what your opponent can do, or if you're flipping decks. So then when you do that, it doesn't really take that much time to figure out. I've played against kids as young as 9 who have beaten me, and that's actually with me trying. So clearly kids can get it pretty cool. And that was on their first attempt too. I'm ashamed to admit. So I figure if they can do it, I can do it too.
Now you got me worried because my 5-year-old, she'll beat me in Smash Brothers.
Oh boy. Yeah, those kids are getting really good at the games. It's like natural. You ever seen those like 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds on their iPad playing games, and it's like they were born playing. And then, you and I are probably a little bit older. I'm a lot older than the little kids now. So I didn't grow up with an iPad. I'm not that old, but there was no iPad. So like I wouldn't have gotten it at like 3 years old.
Yeah, for sure. What I want to say, the original Nintendo Entertainment System came out when I was 7 or 8, or yeah, I think it was 7 or 8 or something. And I imagine if I would started playing when I was 4, I might even be better than I am at the original. But I can't do for worth a darn the newer games. The finagled 3D stuff throws me off.
Yes, some of the newer games in general. I mean, in terms of like video games, I wouldn't even keep up with. They become so complicated. I mean, just look at, even the board games too. Compare either a board game or a video game from 25 years ago, and now look at what games are like today. They're much more complex in terms of.
Yeah, and there's so many choices out there. Like you said, you have a collection. Our collection keeps building and building. Hopefully, we'll be able to get more to the table, especially this Heroes of History. Now, to talk about that other, like you said, you had to revamp and relaunch the Kickstarter. Now we're going to do a special treat for email subscribers, so we can go ahead and talk about that on there. So if anybody wants to, if you're not subscribed to Getting Geeky with Game Relief, the email over at gamereliefgo.com, make sure you do that. If we have already sent out the email and you want to hear more about how Sam was able to revamp and have the successful Kickstarter with Heroes of History, you can go ahead and send me an email at gamerelief@gamereliefgo.com, and I can make sure I get that out to you. Otherwise, if you're already subscribed, you'll be able to get access to this extra content. But thanks so much for joining us on Getting Geeky with Game Relief, Sam, and we'll go ahead and continue this conversation so the email subscribers can get it. But we really appreciate you coming on tonight.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me on, Lake.
No problem.
What is this place? What is it doing here in the Leaves computer? Oh, it's Kickstarter Corner with the Leaves.
We've got 2 games on Kickstarter Corner. We've got from DGS Games, Snakes and Skulls, Freeblades Fantasy Miniature. Shakram, Wavestalkers, and Kandorian Deathmasters for the Freeblades 32mm fantasy skirmish game. What I like about these, even though I've never played a skirmish game, I'm starting to like miniatures a lot. These ones actually, in fact, remind me of cartoons from my youth, and I sat down to talk with John a while back ago about it, and that episode released on Christmas of 2018. So, if you want to find out more about it, go back and listen to my episode as I sit down with John to talk about Snakes and Skulls, Freeblades Fantasy Miniature, and then jump over and check out the campaign. This project only goes through the 22nd of January, so 17 days to go, so check it out. And then, last but not least, from Jesse Harding is Chicken Time Warp. It's a time travel card game in which chicken scientists fight over who gets to escape an endless time vortex. They have reached their funding goal, and there's still 13 days to go to get in on the fun of this, as this project goes through Thursday, the 17th of January. And I actually sat down with Jesse and had a great old time in an interview. You can go back and listen to that. It was the first episode that I released on Thursday, the 3rd of January. I did 2 because there was a cool app that was on Kickstarter. So I would go back and listen to both those episodes, in fact. Listen to Chicken Time Warp first, and then after that, listen to mine and my kids' review of Dies, as well as King Donamore in our Family Fun Day Friday episode. So that was a hoot. But anyways, it's our least favorite time. Unless, would you like to hear your game, or you know someone who has a game coming out or is already on Kickstarter, and you'd like to hear it on Getting Geeky with Game Relief? Go ahead and shoot us a message over at Getting Geeky with Game Relief on the Facebooks, or send me an email at gamerelief@gamereliefgo.com, and we'll go ahead and see what we can do to get your game mentioned as well. If you want to do a giveaway with the Giveaway Geek, I'm also your guy there, as I can get you hooked up there as well. But anyways, our least favorite time, your least favorite time for us to get on with our lives, you to get on with yours. Just a quick reminder, we are doing our episodes on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays now. There can be extras, so make sure you're subscribed to Getting Geeky with Game Life in your favorite podcast app so you never miss an episode. But we'll go ahead and catch you on the flip side. Game Relief out.
Gamer Leaf levels up. Tune in next week to see if Gamer Leaf's luck holds up.